Good morning. Welcome to Sky News Breakfast. Thank you for joining us. Thousands of English football fans have descended on the Portuguese city of Porto ahead of the UEFA Champions League final later today, in the biggest mass departure from the UK since the pandemic. It's only the third ever all-English final in European football's biggest competition, with Manchester City and Chelsea contesting the prize. Portugal stepped in 3 weeks ago to host the event. With the country on the UK's green list, fans avoid quarantine in both directions. But with cases of the Indian variant rising here in the UK, some in Portugal believe inviting so many fans over to the game is an unnecessary risk, as our sports correspondent Martha Kellner reports.
And they're back, the unmistakable sight and sound of English fans abroad. Portuguese police intervened on a couple of occasions last night to defuse what was largely good-natured rivalry between Manchester City and Chelsea supporters. Throughout the day, they commandeered one of the prettiest corners of this city. 12,000 ticket holders and many more are in Porto. This is the biggest mass departure from the UK since before the pandemic, and under a watchful presence, whetting their appetite for the biggest club match in world football.
Does it feel like a little bit of normality in Europe again?
Yes, definitely. Normality is definitely coming back. And I would say to everyone, book holiday and get over here for this sun.
How much have you paid to get out here?
In total, we'd taken everything like £1.50.
This final was originally slated for Istanbul, but was moved to Portugal because the country's on the UK government's travel green list. The beautiful setting of Porto is just a bonus. But with the Indian COVID variant on the rise in England and so many fans travelling here, there's no doubt that this city has taken a risk.
But the mayor says it's worth it.
The fact is people need to work, and this gives the city a new life. I see so many people in the street. This morning I was walking in the street, plenty of people around, and the cafes are full, people are enjoying, and we are showing the city, which is so important. And then, of course, remember, Porto is a city where people like the game, they love the game.
For Manchester City, it's a first European final in 51 years. For this man, a chance to crown a reputation already cemented as the most influential manager of a generation.
I'm pretty sure we have to suffer to win the finals. It's not, go out there and enjoy. So it's words, it's nice, but sometimes it's not possible. So sometimes most of the times in the finals, you have to suffer. You have to be resilient.
Chelsea are the slight underdogs despite having beaten City twice this season. Their manager, Thomas Tuchel, giving his squad some light relief with an impression of his opposite number, Guardiola, until he spotted the camera watching.
I will never suggest that it's me against him, because we don't have a match of tennis. We arrive with our teams, and Pep will prepare his team, and I will prepare my team in the best way possible. We have 2 experiences now against them in different competitions, and 2 different matches, 2 different lineups.
Last year, the Champions League trophy was lifted before empty stands. Today, many of these supporters will be inside the Stadio do Dragão. But the joy of having them back is tempered by a fear among police that the negative aspects of England's travelling fans may return too. Martha Kellner, Sky News, Porto.
One of the experts who helped change number 10 COVID policy in the first wave of COVID has warned about the risk of easing restrictions too quickly. Speaking to the Guardian newspaper, Professor Sir Tim Gowers, whose argument against a herd immunity strategy helped trigger England's first lockdown, says things will get bad very quickly after June if the variant spread is underestimated. Well, it comes as the latest figures show that the number of new daily coronavirus cases in the UK has passed 4,000 for the first time since the 1st of April. 4,182 new coronavirus cases have been confirmed. 10 more deaths have been reported, which means the total number of people who've died within 28 days of a positive test now stands at 127,768. Another 256,517 people have received their first vaccination, and 434,096 people have received their second. 24.48 million people in the UK have now received both doses of a coronavirus vaccine. And our correspondent Emma Birchley joins me now from the newsroom. And Emma, what's the very latest we're hearing about the impact that this rise in coronavirus cases might have on the easing of restrictions on June the 21st?
Well, what we've got today is a pretty dire warning about what would happen if the move out of lockdown happens too fast. We keep hearing about this Indian variant, and that is what's causing so much concern. And the Prime Minister has made it clear all along that every step out of lockdown as part of his roadmap should be irreversible. He doesn't want to be doing U-turns. And that's why this professor, Sir Tim Gowers, says extreme caution should be taken when going into each step of the roadmap. The next one, of course, being June the 21st. Now, he goes on to say maybe everything will be OK. Maybe the number of people who are vaccinated will be just enough. Will, broadly speaking, stay below 1, even with Indian variants. But if it's not OK, we know, because of mathematics, that things will get bad very, very quickly. Or at least maybe it won't look that quick to start with, but it'll grow exponentially. So what he's saying is it will really pick up speed. And we know that the R number has already crept above 1. We know that week on week the number of people testing positive for coronavirus has increased by 24%. But of course, we have got this very successful vaccination programme. Nearly 3/4 of people have received 1 dose. Nearly half of all adults have received 2 doses. And actually, when you look at the cases of the Indian variant, only 3% of people have actually received both doses. So it's clearly working. But I think the key word at the moment is caution, and the government obviously taking that on board, because they have delayed a review into that date of June the 21st of whether that will be the next step out of lockdown.
You? Music festivals are facing the prospect of another lost summer as a result of the government's decision not to introduce a coronavirus insurance scheme. That's the conclusion of a cross-party report into the future of the UK's summer circuit, which is calling on ministers to provide a safety net for live events scheduled to take place after the 21st of June. Our political correspondent Joe Pike reports.
In East London, finishing touches are being made to a mini-festival that is going ahead, when many others aren't. But for the organisers, it's still a big financial risk.
There's so much expenditure when you're booking an event like that. Like, the main thing will be artist costs, but then also you have things like, you know, the actual insurance for like punters, and all of the costs of like actually physically getting crew and staging and all that kind of stuff on the grounds. Like, it's an incredibly, like, it's a hugely expensive endeavour.
And with one summer lost to COVID, the prospect of having to scrap a second is scary.
1 year, maybe you can like survive it, but 2 years, then probably not.
To go where you've never gone before.
Today, a cross-party group of MPs is criticising the government for refusing to back all-important insurance for the industry.
They face, frankly, losing their homes and their businesses if they have to cancel due to COVID. So what we would like to see is the government to do exactly the same thing as it's done with film and TV, and to introduce an insurance scheme, which means that should a festival have to cancel due to COVID, they won't end up losing absolutely everything.
Pre-pandemic, the UK had 1,000 music festivals a year, with over 5 million attendees, contributing nearly £2 billion to the economy.
A key ask really there is for government to back its own roadmap. I think, you know, a lot of people think that this insurance intervention is about money and about injecting that, but it's actually not, because it wouldn't cost the government, the taxpayer, a single penny if the roadmap proceeds accordingly.
In a statement, the government argues we are continuing to work flat out to support festivals and live events. Our events research programme has explored how festivals can get back up and running safely, and festival organisers have received more than £34 million from our unprecedented Cultural Recovery Fund, with more support on the way. Back in East London, this weekend some will be getting their first taste of live music for over a year. But for other festivals, even if the government does change its policy on insurance, it may all be too late. Joe Pike, Sky News.
Well, let's get some more now on the state of coronavirus in the UK. I'm joined by Debbie Stridhal, Professor in Global Public Health at the University of Edinburgh. Good morning to you. How worried should we be that the number of coronavirus cases has passed 4,000 for the first time since the 1st of April?
Well, we can definitely see it creep up, and that right now we're waiting to see, can we break that link between cases going up and hospitalizations and deaths rising as we saw in the previous waves. So I'd say the good news for people is that 2 doses of vaccine look incredibly protective. But if you've only had 1 dose or you're waiting to get your vaccine, you are exposed. And so just be more cautious. It's a matter of weeks now. And, the British people are lucky. We get our vaccines within weeks. A large part of the world won't get vaccines for years.
So Tim Gowes, the Cambridge professor who helped trigger the first lockdown, says the Indian variant could pick up speed and become a big problem. I quote, "Things could get bad very, very quickly."
Yeah, I think we should take his words very seriously. He's incredibly intelligent and experienced. And I think what he is saying is that there are 2 things we're worried about with the Indian variant. The first, is it more transmissible? Does it jump faster between people? And as I said, there's still a lot of people who've only had 1 dose and are waiting on their second, or younger people in their 20s and 30s who are not even having their first dose yet. And they can just jump between those people incredibly quickly and take off. And the second thing is, how much vaccine evasion could there be potentially? Right now, it seems the vaccines are holding up relatively well, but there could be mutations in the future which make it more problematic. So I guess it's a warning to all of us that whenever we think this is behind us, there are new challenges ahead. So we have to proceed cautiously because we're on a good path now. Let's just hold our ground instead of trying to move too quickly and then ending up in, back 10 steps.
So is he right when he says that the downside of being a bit more cautious is a lot smaller than the disadvantages of getting things wrong at this stage?
Agreed completely, because we know that right now we have opened up substantial parts of the economy. We have kids in school. We have more and more normality in our lives. And so it's better to hold where we are now and progress very, very carefully so we hold those gains rather than, moving too quickly and then getting back into a stay-at-home lockdown like we've been through several times. We don't want to go back there. Nobody wants a lockdown. So it's about saying right now, let's hold where we are. Let's see how we get forward. Let's get those vaccines out, but not to be, let's say, over-promising to people that everything's going to be, the end of the pandemic is happening within weeks. I think people now realize that every time that's been said, we've learned that it's not actually true. And so I think just having that caution, but also that optimism that things will get better because the tools that we have are much, much better than they were a year back.
And the projections do look relatively positive, as you're suggesting, because we do have the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which has come online now, and also the progressing of the second vaccination, bringing that further forward for people.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's great news. Fantastic. We have this new jab that's just once you need to get. So you don't even need to go back for your 2 doses. Once we start getting that rolled out, the real thing we're looking for is, can we stop hospitalizations? Can we stop serious illness and deaths? If we can find a way to do this, then there is a way to manage this. That was always the aim of science, to make this manageable like other diseases we had. And for the past year, it has not been manageable because we haven't had a way to stop people getting really ill and dying, and even people being prolonged illness through long COVID. Now we have vaccines which offer one tool among several, including testing, including, now includes better therapeutics to mean we can manage this. And I think the second thing to say is I'm very worried about our border policies. We've just seen an investigation by Sky showing that 1.5 million people came through in the past, 4 months of 2021, and when we were in lockdown, and that 2/3 of them were not UK nationals. I think that's a huge risk we have in terms of importing a variant that will prove problematic. So I don't understand while we cannot travel to India, if you are not a national, they are not letting nationals in, you can travel from there here, even if you're not a national here. So I think there are real questions about our border policies that Sky has raised, which I just find have left us vulnerable to this variant now spreading and creating a difficult situation in terms of how fast we have to move.
OK, Professor Debbie Stridhal, thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us. Thank you. Let's take a look now at some of the other stories making the news this morning. And President Biden says the United States is drawing up a list of targeted sanctions against key members of the Belarusian government following the forced landing of a Ryanair plane and the detention of a journalist. These include preventing Americans from doing business with 9 Belarusian companies. The White House press secretary also said last night that the administration would prevent Belarus from using US airspace. Detectives investigating the shooting of the anti-racism campaigner Sasha Johnson have charged a man with conspiracy to murder. Sasha was shot in southeast London in the early hours of last Sunday and remains in a critical condition in hospital. Head teachers have been warned by the Education Secretary to ensure there's political impartiality in discussions on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in schools, following an increase in anti-Semitism. Gavin Williamson said the recent violence in Gaza has led to anti-Jewish bullying of both students and teachers. Writing to schools, Mr. Williamson said teachers should avoid bias in political discussions and that schools should not work with groups that reject Israel's right to exist. Thousands of asylum seekers in the UK are struggling to access financial support after the government changed the way it distributes money to them. A prepaid bank card meant to be loaded with £39 a week has been replaced by a new card. But some say these either haven't arrived, don't work or don't have any money on them. Sadia Chowdhury reports.
Walter's lifeline came to a halt last Friday. Escaping gang violence in Central America, he's seeking asylum here in the UK. And the Home Office gives him about £40 a week on a prepaid card to help pay for things like food, clothing and toiletries. But a recent change in the way the Home Office issues these cards has left Walter and thousands of others like him without food for days.
We just try to keep it for the baby because with my wife, like adults, we know that we can support a little bit more. But with the baby, it's different. But now that we don't have enough food, it's really critical. It's really critical because we don't know what else we can do.
It's the same story for this woman who chose not to be named. She lives in a housing complex for asylum seekers, where she says around 30 families have yet to receive cards. It's a desperate situation.
I literally thought of selling some of our clothes since I'm not allowed to work. I thought about selling some of our clothes to get some help until the card arrives.
Charities say a string of problems with the new cards has left families hungry now for over a week.
The significance of the problem is that they only get £39.63 to live on a week, and that is such a tiny amount. And when you're on such a low amount, you're not making any savings, you don't have any backup, it's real hand to mouth. So even being without it for a couple of days was a big problem. Being without it with a week, it's a disaster. I mean, people don't have food. We are signposting people to food banks. We're getting phone calls from people who literally haven't eaten. It's really significant.
The Home Office told us those who have issues or are unsure how they can activate their cards are able to contact the 24/7 Migrant Help helpline. Accommodation providers can facilitate emergency cash payments in the meantime. Walter says the helpline gave him no assistance and he's been turned away by charities inundated with requests. As an asylum seeker, he's not allowed to work while his claim is being considered. Until his new card arrives, Walter has no way to feed his family. Sadia Chowdhury, Sky News.
Naz is here with all of the good news. We are smiling. I'm having a barbie on Sunday and it's going to be lovely, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, well...
Yeah,
yes.
you're all invited. No, you're not.
Yeah.
You're not.
Will there be Baileys or other drinks similar to that?
I'm sure there will be.
Yeah, OK, great. Well, it's looking good if you are doing any outdoor activity for this bank holiday weekend. Most places will be dry and bright and warm. Finally, some spring-like weather.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Good morning. Looking mostly fine for this bank holiday weekend. Finally, some spring-like conditions. And in fact, for the last day of the meteorological spring, which is Bank Holiday Monday, we could actually record the highest temperature of the whole of spring 2021. We need to beat 24.5 degrees Celsius. That was the highest back on the 30th of March. So it has been a rather cool and wet spring this year. quite cloudy and cool this morning as well, in fact, and murky around some eastern areas, some mist, fog, har and fret around some eastern coastal counties. Most of that will lift and clear into this afternoon. We should see some bright or sunny spells developing, but it may take some time for it to brighten up across parts of Wales, but there should be some sunny spells developing there. A weak front, though, across western areas of the UK may produce 1 or 2 showers, where currently it is bringing some patchy light rain and drizzle around some central and western areas. In the sunshine, though, the strong May sunshine, it will feel warm for today for most places. There will be sunshine by the end of the day as well, and it will be mainly dry, but eastern coastal counties rather murky and cool.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Jackie's here, walking on sunshine, aren't you? We're all happy because
I
of the
dream
weather.
about walking on sunshine. Actually, we've had a bit of sun this week, haven't we? A lot of rain, a bit of sun. Hopefully it'll be sunny for one of these two teams tonight. Will it be Chelsea? Will it be Manchester City? We've got more build-up to the All-English Champions League final as the City goalkeeper Edison shows why he could be taking a penalty if it goes to a shootout. Plus, it's also the Championship playoff final at Wembley this afternoon. We'll hear from the Brentford and Swansea managers as they look to secure a place in the Premier League. An incredible story in darts as Welshman Johnny Clayton wins the Premier League title at his first attempt, but his £250,000 winner's prize isn't enough to stop him from quitting his full-time job.
They have breached the road. There is a lot of gas being fired all around us. शांति से इनको समझाओ वरना ये हम लोग It is an absolute carnival kind of atmosphere out here for Prime Minister Modi's decisive victory. These students are defying the prohibitory orders and now they're going to be arrested. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. The roads have been inundated. The only way out is to get people by boat. What is feared that over 200 people might have died because of these landslides. This on any given day would have been bustling with people, but today it's absolutely deserted. This is one of the most sensitive areas of northeast Delhi where there's been clashes. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
My name is Fatma Zilzila, the founder of EcoStar from Kuwait, where we face many environmental problems related to waste pollution, deforestation, and lack of information. We are collecting recyclables from houses, schools, and businesses in order to recycle them. In exchange of your recyclables, you get a tree.
Jackie's here, can hardly contain herself. All English final.
I'm so excited. It's not my team. I'm not that excited.
Yeah,
but
but
I am
still.
actually. I think it's an amazing achievement, and Interesting to see who will be walking out of the Estadio de Dragao with the Champions League trophy and who will be walking out of Wembley and into the Premier League today. Let's have a look.
This sports bulletin is brought to you by Vitality, committed to getting 100 million people 20% more active by 2025.
The world has been waiting longer for an Olympic Games than any time since World War II. But for the athletes still hoping to qualify, time is fast running out. Skateboarding is the new kid on the block, full of new kids ready to slide into the mainstream.
I feel like it might always kind of be thought of like the sort of like delinquent sport, but you know, we're breaking away from that a little bit.
Don't let the American accent fool you. This 14-year-old is more full English than eggs over easy.
I like to make the joke that I'm half a New Yorker, 3/4 a Brummie. I mean, I spent so much of my childhood in Birmingham because my dad's British. So many people, they bust on British food, but it's so good. Like a full English fry-up for dinner. Like, it's so good.
Skateboarding made its X Games debut in 1995, and 26 years later it will bring a blend of high-risk action and technical artistry to shake up the establishment. To drop in once takes guts, but Bombette comes from a fighting family.
My grandfather has a boxing gym in Erdington called the Rose and Crown, and so I spent a lot of time there when I was little, and my dad used to train there. He actually was trying to go to the Olympics himself. He was close, but no cigar.
It'll take every bit of that competitive edge to make Team GB. Skateboarders from around the world are battling it out at qualifying events like this one between now and June to try and accumulate enough points to make the Games. Bombette needs to land in the top 20 in the world to keep her dream of reaching the top alive.
My words,
absolutely
that was
brilliant.
Fantastic.
Ben Ransom, Sky Sports.
The global pandemic has impacted hard on all aspects of the winter sports industry. Five-time Olympic skier Graham Bell portrays a landscape ravaged by closed resorts and little positive news.
Pretty much all of the alpine countries have closed their lifts, apart from Switzerland, which has kind of stayed kind of in the game. But from a British perspective, with the lockdown and with the travel ban, you know, I really can't see there being any British ski season.
But it's not all doom and gloom. There is light at the end of the tunnel. A recent independent Delphi study involving 53 experts predicts the pandemic may have actually boosted the industry's chances of a sustainable revival. This may sound a little far-fetched for a sport that is by definition a close-to-nature experience.
Due to our experts, they believe that COVID-19 will accelerate the technological innovation and digitization in the winter sports industry. And so I think this let us look into the future with a little smile on our faces.
The experts predict participation across all sectors of the industry, including those with disabilities, will increase as advancements in e-sports drive the industry forward. By 2025, you may be able to race against your heroes on a virtual slope, and the idea of a virtual Ski World Championship is not just a pipe dream.
That the technology side of things has really improved as well. You know, you mentioned esports. I think winter sports has been quite slow to adopt that, but if you look at the success of Formula One with the way that they did their esports, I think that will help winter sports if they introduce that as well. And you can capture some of the people who want to go skiing but perhaps can't.
It seems that by overcoming these hurdles, the ski industry may turn a long-term downfall into long-term gains. JP Barrell, Sky Sports.
My name is Ellen Keane. I am 26 years old. I am from Dublin, Ireland. I am a Paralympic swimmer. I am a European champion from 2018, and I also won a Paralympic bronze medal at the Rio 2016 Paralympic Games. I am hyper happy and think I'm gas. My biggest highlight has been winning gold at the European Championships here in Dublin in 2018. And then my low point, I think, maybe even lockdown. It has been so hard. Long, uncertain.
Committed to getting 100 million people 20% more active by 2025.
This is Sky News Breakfast. Coming up, we'll be speaking to the presenter, Vicky Patterson, who's nearly completed her overnight challenge, aiming to raise money for homelessness charities. Welcome back. You're watching Sky News Breakfast. Now, the pandemic has highlighted concerns about youth homelessness, with the charity Centrepoint saying the UK was at crisis point even before COVID. Over the last year, calls to the charity's helpline from young people worried about homelessness have increased by about a third. To highlight the issue, a number of stars, including our next guest, have gone a whole night without sleep, hoping to raise money for homeless young people. So we're joined now by the presenter and Queen of the Jungle, Vicky Patterson, who's in the last half hour of her sleepless night. Good morning to you, Vicky. I bet the morning hasn't come around soon enough for you. How have you managed through the night?
Oh, hi, Petal. You look so fresh. I'm so jealous. I'm really, it's the last stretch, isn't it? And I'm sorry if I'm a little bit tongue-tied. I am feeling super tired now, looking a little bit like a little mole as well. Not my finest and glamorous hour, but it's all for a very good cause, isn't it?
Yes, it is indeed. Tell us how you managed to stay awake through the night. I mean, you were doing various activities, weren't you?
Yeah, do you know what? I couldn't have done it. Like, we had a last-minute substitution. My mum came off the bench. She wasn't even signed up to do the event. I was meant to be doing it with my boyfriend. But my mum has stayed up with us, and she's been doing a jigsaw for most of the night. She's having a great time. She's been an excellent moral support. We watched some films, did a little workout with Mr. Motivator. I've had my lovely little doggy keeping me company. We've done some self-care.
Stay up all night as well?
Oh, this one, absolutely not. Total fraud. He's been catching catnaps the whole time, but he's so fluffy and cute, I let him off. Yes, I do.
I love it, the dog catching catnaps. So tell us why you've done this, why you've put yourself through this.
A couple of years ago, actually, it was me and my mum became aware of the work that Centrepoint do. We did a sleep out event for them, which was their event before the pandemic, obviously, where people got together and experienced a glimmer of what it must be like to be young and homeless. But given the current climate, you can't do that. We can't have loads of people sleeping on the streets for this. So this event in particular was the new one. And after speaking to Centrepoint, I realised the year that we've had has been horrible for everybody. We've all had our hardships and our struggles, but nobody has suffered more than young people. If you look at the industries that have been affected most by the COVID-19 virus and the pandemic, it's retail, it's hospitality. And who works in those? Young people. So more so than ever now, you've got young people who can't pay their rent, who are facing homelessness. And I just felt like this pandemic had exacerbated an already really tenuous situation, and I knew that Centrepoint needed any help and any sort of
Yeah, the figures are quite shocking, aren't they? Centrepoint saying 120,000 young people faced homelessness between 2019 and 2020, and that's increased by more than 10,000. So as you say, the situation exacerbated by the pandemic.
Absolutely. And I know we've all had hard years and things like that, but there's now more than ever Centrepoint need our help. They have a huge goal to end youth homelessness, and I think if anybody can do a bit, whether it's donating, sponsoring, signing up to sponsor like a room, you can do that. I just think if it's within your realm of capabilities, we should give it a go. Bit of kindness goes a long way, doesn't it?
No, absolutely. And 3 years ago, as you were saying, that you slept outside with 100 volunteers in Sunderland. I think on that occasion, the charity raised, what, £300,000? How much are you hoping to raise this time round?
Oh, God, I'd love to smash that. Like, I think it's a big ask because I know everybody's had a very difficult year, but I think what this year has shown is that we need to show everybody a bit more kindness. We need to be supporting each other, and just, be nice to our fellow man. So I think we've got this in the bag. I think we're going to smash it.
Do we know specifically what the money will be spent on?
So Centrepoint help with a number of things, including housing, education, vocational skills, healthcare, mental health, physical health, and it goes across the board. I've met a number of brilliant people who firsthand have been helped by Centrepoint to turn their lives around, to realise that being homeless, experiencing homelessness, it doesn't have to be who you are, it doesn't have to define you, it isn't your story, it can just be a chapter, and there is something bright and amazing for you after that. So I know that whatever they do with their money, it's going to be changing the lives of young people, and it's going to be incredible.
Yeah, very positive indeed. Vicky, thank you so much for speaking to us. You've got about 20 minutes left. Hold in there. You can do it.
Thank you, Petal. It's good to know you believe in us.
Thanks for speaking to us. Stay awake.
Bye.
Time now to take a look at the weather for you with Naz.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Good morning. It's looking mostly bright, fine and warm for this bank holiday weekend, believe it or not. Right at the end of the meteorological spring, we're finally getting temperatures around average or a little above for the time of year, and with mostly settled conditions. It's a cool and cloudy affair out there for this morning, though, and there are some patchy outbreaks of light rain and drizzle, particularly across parts of Wales and parts of the Midlands and central England. And further east, it's a bright start, but there are some rather murky conditions around coastal parts. But it soon brightens up into this afternoon with a strong May sunshine. We'll see plenty of it later. But as you can see, it will take some time for it to brighten up across parts of Wales. Eventually it will there, though, and there will be some sunny spells. But, well, we've got that weak feature across western parts of the UK, bringing that patchy light rain at the moment. It will tend to break up into some showers that could be quite heavy, but they're very well scattered showers across parts of the north and west of the UK. Generally speaking, it's dry for today and warm and bright, but eastern coastal counties quite murky and cool.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
It's at 7:41. Coming up next to look at the newspapers with the anthropologist Mariana Hotter and the editor of Challenges Northern Ireland, Thomas Copeland. Do stay with us.
I think I knew from the age of about 2 that I seemed to be different, but because no one picked up on it, I just assumed I was broken in some way. And then I spent 4 decades believing that nobody could fix me, that I was just, there's something wrong with me. For instance, meltdowns, which I've had since I was tiny, they're really, really scary. And if you don't know that you're having a meltdown and you're like 35, it's terrifying. Whereas now, because I'm aware that I'm autistic, it means that I can give myself a bit more of a break. I can go, okay, my senses are overwhelmed. I need to go somewhere dark. I need to be alone. Like, I can manage it a little better. So, it's more about learning more about yourself and how to be kind to yourself, essentially, because, I spent decades beating myself up for everything I couldn't do instead of celebrating the things that I could. And the reason I wanted to write the book was that I spent my childhood looking for people like me in books and not really finding them. So when I wrote the character, I knew nothing about autism at all. And I was writing about this girl who is socially inept would be a nice word, who climbs under tables when she's overwhelmed, who can't really process emotions, all the things that I had gone through that I just felt like I hadn't seen in literature. And it wasn't until, they came out 8 years ago, and it wasn't until my diagnosis that I suddenly looked at Harriet and went, oh my goodness, she is obviously also autistic. We just didn't know that that was what it was. We just thought we were freaks, essentially. It's terrifying going out and speaking. It's not something that's in my skill set, really. I'm very, very scared. But I do think that, from the messages I've had, even now, like that it is helping young girls and women, even men as well, to see themselves and understand themselves better. And it's removing some of that stigma, because essentially the spectrum is not a linear spectrum. It's not mild to severe. It is a colour wheel. And autistic people fall on it in a different place. And you don't necessarily know what that looks like or how that presents. So I think it's really important to show that, essentially, you don't necessarily know what people are going through internally or behind closed doors. And hopefully that will help younger people see themselves, especially younger people. That's my focus.
For the early risers.
As we examine the story beyond the headline.
For the knowledge seekers.
Welcome to Divided States.
For the straight talkers. The curious and the ones who want to be entertained.
Backstage, Sky News' entertainment podcast.
For wherever you are.
Welcome to Sophie Ridge on Sunday podcast.
For the ones who want to know more.
Welcome to the All Out Politics podcast.
For the listeners.
From Sky News Storycast.
Sky News Podcasts. Listen and subscribe for free.
Did you know pollen levels tend to be higher in the morning and at night? The Pollen Reports, sponsored by Philips Connected Air Purifiers.
After a largely cloudy morning, most places will brighten up this afternoon with sunny spells. The best of any sunshine will be across eastern parts of the UK, although North Sea coastal counties may stay rather murky and cool. It'll be mainly dry and warm too for most places, but a few well-scattered showers can't be ruled out. Pollen levels today will be moderate for most of England and low elsewhere across Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland. The grass pollen season is in its early stage, but some symptoms may occur on sunny days for some people. However, oak tree pollen and fungal spores are at a medium risk.
The Pollen Reports, sponsored by Philips Connected Air Purifiers.
Back with us now to take us through the newspapers, the anthropologist Mariana Hotta and the editor of Challenger's Northern Ireland, Thomas Copeland. Welcome back to you both. Starting with you, first of all, Marianne, and this is in the Telegraph, really looking at the repercussions of children being out of school for so long. But one of the solutions, a longer school day, perhaps not the best way to help them catch up, it's being suggested.
Yeah, this is results from a report conducted by researchers at the Department of Education Research at Cambridge University. And basically they're saying that longer school hours, so extending the school day, say from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m, in order to try and help kids catch up, particularly children from more deprived backgrounds, might not actually do that much. It'll do a little bit. It'll help a little bit with English, a little bit with maths. But they're saying basically more of the researchers are saying more of the same isn't going to be as useful as improving quality rather than quantity. So actually investing additional funds in a better range of activities, better quality of teaching. And I say that, but with the proviso that our teachers are an amazing force for good in our children's lives. And this is not bashing the quality of teaching, but so many schools are cash strapped and they're having to make very difficult choices about what kind of resources they fund or what staff they employ, because they can't do everything they want to do. They can't do all the things that they know would benefit the children in their care.
But it's time, though, that they've missed out on. Surely the solution is to replace it with more time.
Well, it's kind of what you do with that time as well. So if we are going to increase the school working day, then what we need to also do is not just more hot housing for English and maths, because that will help a little bit, but not as much as increasing time for things like arts, crafts, music, play outside, sport, and crucially, time for children to socialise, as well as the skills for learning to learn. So not just kind of doing kind of rote learning of maths and English, but actually developing those skills that make you able to learn for a lifetime, because that's what's going to improve your mental health, your emotional well-being, your resilience, and ultimately, the bottom line, your value to the economy.
Yes,
because
and I think actually relearning how to socialise is key, because they've been so unaccustomed to being around other children during this period. Another area that's had a severe, real sort of difference is in terms of the backlog in terms of surgery that you've had a look at, Thomas. This is in the Express. There's a huge backlog, and the Express saying that we need these particular hubs to cope with it.
That's right. This has been one of the major downsides to the lockdown, I suppose, alongside children's education, has been the effect that this has had on the backlog in our NHS. So this article in particular talks about hip and knee operations. The main one that sort of strikes me, jumps out at me, is cancer diagnosis, and especially early cancer diagnosis. I mean, it can be weeks and months can really make the difference in terms of cancer, and getting diagnosed early is so important. And over the course of this pandemic, thousands, I would dare to say tens of thousands of cancer operations or appointments, I should say, early doors diagnosis have been cancelled. And that will have a detrimental impact over the next number of years, because every week and month that goes by severely diminishes chances of survival. So this is serious stuff. Now, this report brought by the Royal College of Surgeons suggests that 4.9 people as of March, this is probably only England specific, but it doesn't say specifically where it applies to, probably England, 4.9 people waiting on starting operations. So a huge number of people have been delayed as a consequence of this pandemic. So stark is the problem in Northern Ireland. For example, the Health Minister, Robin Swan, this week released a statement saying that unless there was radical action, the founding principle of the NHS, that it would be free at the point of use, would be fundamentally undermined. Such would be the lengths of the waiting lists. And elsewhere, I know in the Mirror today, they're talking about waiting lists of 4 years plus for some types of operations. Of course, then the other problem here is that, inequality sets in. People who can pay to go private can do so. And that means that the people who are left behind have to wait even longer. Now, this article is suggesting a £1 billion over 5 years to set up surgical hubs to deal with some of these issues. The problem that jumps out with me, and it's one that we've seen persistently in the health sector, is that long-term funding is needed. 5 years, is a long time, but in that time, you won't be able to completely train that many doctors, completely train that many nurses, build entirely new hospitals. Healthcare is one of those issues that requires very long-term funding. And in our system, political system, that's difficult to do because you have 5-year terms. So in order to get sort of 10 and 20-year plans, that's enormously difficult to achieve. This issue of long waiting lists will be the next medical emergency in this country, and it needs to be treated with the same kind of urgency as COVID.
Moving away from the repercussions of the pandemic, let's have a look at the Star front page, not something we often do, Marianne, but tell us why a 4-day working week could save the planet.
I know, look at that, the Star. Isn't it good? So basically, this idea is based on a report that has recently just been published, saying that basically, if we all move to a 4-day working week with no loss of pay, so you're not having your pay cut by 20%, you're just doing your job in 4 days, getting the same salary, we would reduce our emissions in the UK by 127 million tonnes. So that's our carbon footprint. And that doesn't mean that much to me, that figure. No, probably you either. That's a 21% reduction overall, which is equivalent to removing every single private car off all our roads. So it's pretty significant. Now, how does that work? Well, it's by reducing energy usage, reducing commuting. So some of these figures will have to be adjusted if people continue to work from home because of COVID and kind of those changes to flexible working patterns. But bottom line is it'll still be a massive reduction. And with that extra day that you get where you're not at work, the argument is that we can actually live more sustainable lifestyles. Now, this isn't kind of radical, psychedelic thinking. This is stuff that most of us want to do. Things like spending more time with your family, spending more time with your friends, spending a bit more time doing exercise or leisure pursuits. And those generally are activities that have a low carbon cost, a sort of a low input, because you're not having to commute, you're not getting fast food.
Well, I was going to say that's if you're not driving all over the place to do those activities, though, isn't it?
Yeah, to some extent. Generally, overall, when you kind of look at the statistics from a population-wide perspective, the reduction will still be significant. So let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, who's going to say no to a 4-day week on the same pay? They're not going to get much resistance to that. To the Telegraph, Thomas, English reluctance to pay for Scotland to stay.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. It's a poll in the Telegraph revealing what will be the problem at the heart of the union, which is that English voters aren't really fussed about the union. So as Sturgeon secures another government, another term in Scotland, this poll reveals that only 20% of English people strongly oppose independence, then 32% oppose it. And a surprisingly large 25% of English respondents in this survey said that they actually supported Scottish independence. Unsurprisingly, then, the next step, a severe minority of English voters are in favour of increasing money being sent to Scotland in order to sort of shore up the union. And, I can understand why. Scotland already enjoys 17% higher in terms public spending per heads than, for example, the UK average. East Midlands, let's make a comparison. East Midlands, 10% below the the UK average. So if you are, for example, maybe a working class person in the East Midlands, you're looking at Scotland, where the UK-wide Barnett formula, largely paid for by English taxpayers, is funding the Scottish social care system. And then you've also got Nicola Sturgeon saying Scots are being trapped in the union, we need to get out. You can understand why you mightn't be too fussed on maintaining the union. Now, all of these things need to be set in context, and the overall amounts of money are small, and there are different levels of deprivation across the UK. But I think, the takeout from this for Boris Johnson, and he will need to be the person that is keeping an eye on this, because unless there is some severe and drastic work done, he's going to be sort of the latter-day Lord North, and he will not want his reputation to be the end of the union.
Thomas and Mary-Anne, we have run out of time, but we shall see you in the next hour. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Nadia Frontier.
My name is Ryan Matthews. I'm the Marine Assistant at Rotherham Research Station,
Which is to the west of the West Antarctic Peninsula. So far I've been here for 5 months and it is an absolutely wonderful experience.